All right. Good morning. Good morning to you all out there. It is Monday. I just got done streaming to my Facebook, hopefully fixing some audio problems that I had the other day while doing the Non Sequitur show. I think I've isolated most of the issues. One of them I still can't fix, but I have people working on it that know about these things a lot more than I do. I do think that my preamp was a little bit high. I noticed some clipping, and then I think that somehow with my compressor and my noise suppression, things just got a little muffled. So I do think that's a big cause of it, because it only really happens on the Streamlabs. Because when I stream by StreamYards, I don't seem to have those audio issues. And the only other issue that I had that unrelated to the Streamlabs has to do with some kind of automatic gain control on my volume that I brought up before. I can't fix it. I don't know what's on with it. So I'm just going to have to, like, I guess, be cognitively aware and be cognizant of the fact that my volume just likes to go down every so often. And if I look on my mixer, I have to manually go in and set it up again and raise it up. So anyways, guys, so a lot of people had messaged me in the last couple of days, people that I haven't even heard from a long time. I mean, I literally had a former college girlfriend that I've known for, I don't know, 25, 30 years, I guess, right? I mean, and I started going to college down here back, I think, in 1924, 25, I think was the first time. And then I went back in 2000 something. But my initial college, after I got in the military, I think that's when I met her, because we go back a long time, and she had asked me about my feelings on the Charlie Kirk Memorial. And it was a very long service. It was like 4 or 5 hours long. And of course, somebody who's a non-believer, they wanted my take on it. I don't think she's really a strong believer, but I had, both Christians and atheists asked me, what did I think about it? And I even had one person who, had asked me, I don't know if you watched it, but part of that memorial, they had asked people, look, if you want to receive Jesus and become Christian, stand up and stuff like that. And I get that, right? I mean, it was supposed to be a combination of a memorial service, revival, and politics all ingrained in one, just exactly what Charlie Kirk stood for. I thought that was very appropriate, actually. I really did. So I could see why they kind of, ingrained all those things together in remembrance of him. I don't know what this means here. Hang on. Comments. Zebulon, 1924. What did I put something wrong? Did I got a wrong date somewhere? What was that in regards to? That happened in 1924. Refresh my memory, Zebulon, because I don't know what that refers to. But while you're explaining that, I'm sorry, 1994, 95, 1924. I'm not that old. Okay, that makes a lot more sense. No, I got in the military in 1993, and then I had served from 87 to 93, and then after that, I went to college. Okay, so I'm sorry, I may have said the date wrong. I'm only my second French press of coffee here. Okay, so give me a break. I'm still waking up, sort of. Thank you. Hey, at least you're listening. At least somebody's paying attention, right? Because that's really all that matters. I've already lost like 200 subscribers over my 2 channels in the last couple of days, which is perfectly fine. And I got to tell you, go with God if there's a God, which, again, I don't believe there is one. But I mean, I'm not here for them. Those are not going to be anybody that I want to reach. You can't reach them. They don't want to listen. They don't want to even be informed. That's their prerogative. I don't begrudge them. Go and do your thing. There's many other things to watch. But I do have a lot of people that wanted me to start podcasting again, or start broadcasting again, and start giving my views on things. And I'm not going to sit idly by and not do that when all the things are going on in the world. And if this costs me subs, then that's fine. I'm not here for the subs any longer. I'm not here to rebuild my channel. If my channel does grow, it'll be organic, and it'll because of the information I put out there, because people want to listen and people want to watch. I'm not going to be beholden to anybody. And if you've been a long-time subscriber, great. If you have been somebody new to the channel, that's great too. But I mean, the comments, dude, on my Non Sequitur show last episode, I left most of them up. I mean, as long as they don't cross the line, I'm not going to. I want people to see the vitriol out there. I want people to see the dichotomy between what happens when you have people that will protest for, like, the death of somebody because of a fentanyl overdose. That may have been or may not have been exacerbated by police, but still, you had cities burned down because of George Floyd. You had people rioting in the streets. You had homicides. But with the death of Charlie Kirk, you saw none of that. Nobody rioted. Nobody called for burning down of businesses. What they had was a vigil. And if people cannot see the dichotomy between a vigil and calling for violence, then they're not somebody that I want around the channel to begin with. And those people are not welcome around my channel. I'm not going to have it any longer, because those people are not interested in even having discourse anymore. Because again, I still think that you have to have discourse, right? I do agree with the people out there telling me, look, Steve, you can't just stop talking to people about these things. You can't just explain and tell people things. You have to be able to get through to the people that you think you can get through to. And I happen to agree with that, right? So I don't want to do that completely. But as far as like any debate, then I'm pretty well over that. I'm not here to debate. That's not going to happen. Or at least I hope it doesn't happen, because I don't really think it needs to. It's just like flat Earth. Flat Earth is done. That's over with. There's the only people that are still doing flat Earth are the complete grifters. We all know that. So I just really have no interest in it. I think it's still fascinating that people believe in flat Earth, and the people that do flat Earth stuff, more power to them. But it's just not my thing. But anyways, JJ, welcome back, JJ. MAGA, yeah. And by the way, I hate the fact that it doesn't show the emoticon for the American flag, because how it says MAGA US. What that means is not us, it's the United States. It's because for some reason it doesn't always do the flag properly, which I think is kind of bizarre. But if you're MAGA out there, put hashtag MAGA, because I want to know who is and who isn't, not to differentiate, but just because I like to know who's seen the light and who hasn't. Now that doesn't mean if you're not MAGA that you haven't seen the light. That's fine. I'm not expecting everybody to. I mean, that's why I don't want to have an echo chamber either. I don't want my channel just to be people that agree with me. That would be it would be bad too, because then I'm not engaging on the topics, and I know the topics well enough where I think I can at this point. Hey Doug, hey Steve, good to see you back. Thank you. And JJ's MAGA all day long, every day. Thank you. Yeah, it's funny because like I said, I just got done with a testing thing on Facebook to test my audio. And I realized that the way they think of political spectrums, I think are completely wrong. I think that the MAGA is actually more conservative than Republican, but it is actually less than socialism, fascism, communism, Nazism. So it's weird when they think that MAGA is Nazi when it's actually less than Democrats. The Democrats and the socialists are closer to fascist and Nazism than MAGA and conservatism even is. If you look at it as far as authoritarianism, you look at it as far as the way the government intervenes in your life, I think the political spectrum goes more like this. And again, there's no right or wrong answer to this, because again, it depends on your worldview as far as the way you're looking at the political spectrum. But I look at it as anarchy, liberalism, Republican, conservative, Democrat, socialist, which would include the socialist Democrats, fascism, and then hardcore communism, Nazism, and things of that nature. That's how I would look at it as far as the governmental intervention. Dad Knows Best, who's still a Patreon on this channel, thank you, or a member. I've lost a lot of members, a lot of Patreon, again, because I wanted putting out the content, and I respect them to not support that, right? I mean, if you're going to be paying for something or supporting something, you need to have content, totally. But to let you guys know, I will be streaming a lot more than ever, because of the importance this is to me and other factors. So I will be building up my memberships and things of that nature. But if that doesn't happen, that's fine too. It does help. I appreciate it immensely. I always appreciated every dime that's ever was spent to promote my beliefs. Unfortunately, when it came to the Non Sequitur show, I never saw a dime of it. He got everything, like literally every dime. I never saw a dime from any of that. And so I'm not here to grift or do it for the money, because if I do that, I'd become Christian, right? I can tell you right now, I could become Christian, and I would have Christian channels promote me like you've never seen before. I would have Trinity Radio with Braxton Hunter and Dr. Jonathan Brissett, that I respect both of them. I will be on their channel. They would definitely be promoting me. I would have let's see, what was the other channel? I can't think of the name right now. Inspire Philosophy. He would probably promote me, right? Because I've stood by him. So, and he's got a massive channel. Hell, I might even be able to talk to Mike Winger, who's never wanted to talk to me because I was an agnostic. I'm not against him at all. So there's big channels out there. If I really wanted to grift, I would just become Christian, right? So obviously, it makes no sense for people to say out there that I'm doing things contrary to my own personal beliefs. If you think that way, then don't be around. I'm not interested in you. I will never be able to convince you of anything, because you've already started with a position of falsity. I can't reason you out of something that is unreasonable, right? So if you think that I'm doing this for any other reason, that I've told you, then believe it. I don't care. I'm not going to convince you otherwise. I don't care. Zebulon says, I'm not MAGA, but I'm not MAGA either. Okay, so you're a MAGA agnostic. That's okay. That's okay. Nothing wrong with that. But thank you for modding for me still, Zebulon. Dad Knows Best says, and by the way, I do know who Dad Knows Best is because he was the person I was talking to on Facebook. And so he, it's so funny. I kept telling him, I was like, dude, because I know he does well off. I'm like, you haven't donated even $1. And then I realized he's actually still a member. I'm so sorry. Now you made me feel bad, dude. He says, sorry, Steve, I should have let you know I'm John Foley and changed my new. I remember that now. I didn't remember it before. I do know now. So I'm sorry about that, man. Hey, I correct my shit, okay? Give me a break. But thank you for listening. Since I did tell him I was going to be doing this stream. So to dive into this stream today, we're going to be talking about Charlie Kirk's memorial. I'm not going to really show any preset stuff that I had in mind. I'm not going to like show my Twitter or anything. I love you too, man. I really do. You have been such a good and honest person in my life, and I respect you immensely. And I'm going to keep those people around that I think are earn my respect, because even John had asked me before, do you think respect is earned or just kind of given? And I'm like, no, it's absolutely earned. I start off with a basic modicum of human respect. I do think there's an intrinsic thing in dialogue that we're going to approach each conversation with the other person in a respectful manner as much as possible. That doesn't have to be earned. That part, if he's asking about that, that's just natural law. That's just a societal compact or contractualism that we agree in society that if we're going to have a conversation with people, we're going to have a discussion, right? Hey, Mikey, welcome back, man. Glad to see you stream more often. Yeah, I don't think Mikey streams, if I'm not mistaken. I've been to his channel before. I don't think he even has any content. Do you, Mikey? I don't remember. You don't have any content on a YouTube channel, do you? But anyway, so let's get into this. I will be looking at my Twitter only because that's going to be remembering who attended and who spoke. I will tell you that over 90,000 people attended, and that's probably not even including the people that are on the outside, which was probably another 5 to 10,000. And I will say this was probably the biggest single solitary gathering of people in remembrance of anybody in all of American history, especially for a civilian. Because you got to remember, Charlie Kirk was not a politician. He was not he was a political leader, right? And he was a public figure, but he wasn't a head of state. This was bigger than I think any head of state thing. I mean, this was probably bigger than when Princess Diana passed away. I mean, this turnout was gargantuan, to say the least. And I think it's something that does need to be discussed as to why. Mike says, no, I don't. Mikey said, I don't stream. I just have a couple shit songs I played on the channel. Yeah, that's what I thought. Like I said, it's been a while since I've been to your channel, but I didn't think there was much content. It's a handful of videos at best. Hang on, I got to cough real quick. All right, so it was a big event, right? And I will tell you, I did have to look into this, but as far as I can tell, there was 12 speakers that spoke. And think about this, guys, before I dive into this. Out of those 12 speakers, there have been 5, count them, 5 assassination attempts between the speakers and the person being memorialized. I want you to wrap your head around that just for a second. I don't care what end of the political spectrum you are on. Have your critical thinking skills cap on right now. There have been 5, and I got them doing the lawn out here. There have been 5 attempted political assassinations, one of which succeeded on Charlie Kirk. That is a statistical anomaly that we've never seen before in the entire history of the United States of America. If you cannot see that, I'm just going to say you're not a critical thinker. You have no thinking skills whatsoever at that point, because it is so blatantly obvious that 5 political assassination attempts, and one of which succeeded. We've never. Could somebody explain to me when we've ever seen anything like that before? No, we haven't seen it before, and there's reasons for that. There's reasons why we're seeing it more than ever, and I will get into that either later this episode or another episode. I really kind of want to do it on the Non Sequitur show to talk about the psyop that actually is going on. It's not a conspiracy theory. This is legit. Experts that are actually saying this as well, and body language people and political analysts that are saying that this is a lot of brainwashing going on, a lot of brainwashing techniques that are going on that we're seeing in the media. And it's all coming from the far left. Now, I'm not going to say there's not some from the right, But I mean, what we're seeing is mind control techniques that were used. I think a lot of it was created by a guy named L. Ron Hubbard, who was the founder of Scientology. If you guys remember, I did do some episodes on that with David Miskiewicz's father. I had him on to talk about Scientology. But there was a program that was called Alice in Wonderland. And that program was to explain, to try to get people to be suggestible to things they normally wouldn't accept. And I'll just give you a brief overview on it before I get into the crux of this stuff, is that when your brain starts getting overloaded by massive amount of information, when you start seeing this juxtaposed stuff, when you're scrolling through your feed, and your brain is trying to understand what you are seeing, what you are hearing, and especially if it goes against your values or things that you believe, your core beliefs, or even your non-core beliefs, your more modifiable beliefs through belief revisionism, it latches on to things called anchor points. And these anchor points do exist. There was a study done in 1977. I don't remember the names. I should probably dive into it more, but I think it was, I remember I started with a T, Tchaikovsky or something. But they did a study where they would see if the brain could be influenced by merely random data. And it absolutely can be. It absolutely can be. And so what happens is the brain wants to understand and it wants to accept the first thing that it's told, which in mind control techniques is what we call suggestion, implanting a suggestion, right? You hear that term. And again, I'm not portraying myself to be an expert on this. I'm not by any stretch of imagination. I'm just a lay person that reads about this stuff, that understands it, I think, pretty well, and has talked to people that understand it. And this is what I think is going on. Because I agree with them. I agree with the experts on my side of the fence, obviously. And you can say it's cognitive bias. That's fine. But still, I think the data supports it. That if the brain latches on to the first thing that it wants to take as an explanation, even if that explanation is somehow, to us, abnormal or surreal, they're gonna latch onto it. Or they just give it some plausibility. They're going to accept it more than they would the second or third things that they hear, except if you have critical thinking skills. And then you can recognize that maybe the first thing I heard isn't the correct answer. Maybe it's some other explanation, right? And you start looking for possible other explanations. Don't accept the first thing you hear, so to speak. But what happens when they're planting these suggestions to the left hears these things and they'll start doing things that the normal person would never do, like bashing on a memorial service. Nobody in the right mind would ever do this. I don't care who you are. If you're bashing on a memorial service of this nature to somebody from the far left, I think you're a disgusting human being. Now, I can understand if somebody really did hold some really nasty thoughts. Like, we can all probably agree that Fred Phelps from the Westboro Baptist Church, I can understand why somebody would want to criticize the honoring of that person. I get that. But that is through actual evidence that we've seen that person has espoused certain views that we find to be abominable. But would I go out of my way to protest his funeral? No, I wouldn't. Right? He was a disgusting human being. But that's the difference between a normal human being and what we're seeing out there by the far left. Okay, so and I'm going to get into what the speakers had said and my views on this particular memorial. So UK said, and by the way, let me know if my volume just went down because it looks like it just did. Is it better now? UKPI says, even though Charlie was an asshole, no one deserves being killed, but I guess he knew what was he getting into. Well, but here's the thing, though. What made him an asshole? Somebody needs to explain this to me because I don't get it. I've never seen him be an asshole to anybody. If anything, he was the peacemaker. He was the negotiator. He was kind in conversations. If you want to label me an asshole, that's fine. I could be an asshole to somebody in a conversation. Dad Knows Best could be an asshole in a conversation, right? We get this. We accept this. That's just who we are. I take a different approach than Charlie. It doesn't mean that one approach is better than the other. It's not. I think it takes a village. I think his approach is necessary to have some people do it. I also think that my approach is necessary. And we each take what we're best at. And he was the best at having civil dialogue. John says, it had to be affected. You can't pass information without it having some kind of impact at a molecular impossibility. Well, and it's also because the media is allowed to do it through the Operation Mockingbird, through the CIA, and also through the Smith Modernization Act of 1912. It allowed foreign information, disinformation, propaganda that was normally meant to be used outside of our country to be picked up by local and mainstream media, but to be used to lie to the American people. And that's exactly what we're seeing today. We see CNN and MSNBC just not just decontextualizing, not just distorting, but absolutely 100% lying to people. It is as welling as you get. And that's another thing that actually is more toward actual fascism, right? You have a government that's going to propagandize people. If you read 1984, you understand Oceania, and you understand the speak that they did, right? When they would say, they would want you to believe that 2 + 2 = 5. And the reason why they wanted you to believe that 2 + 2 = 5 is because if we start with a contradiction, you'll believe anything, because they can implant other things into your mind. Wait a sec. One sec. Okay, so that's why in George Orwell's book, they were able to control people like that and get people to believe things that the average person wouldn't believe, right? Because they were doing these mind control techniques, because they started with contradictions, such as 2 + 2 = 5. Thank you. I'm coming to 5 by 5. Yeah, I just adjusted my volume back up. Matter of fact, in 1984, the statement that they said was, the party told you to reject the evidence of your eyes and ears. It was their final, most essential command. That is one of the most profound things I've ever heard. I seriously, that's one of my favorite sayings, because it is so damn true that we're living in an Orwellian 1984 novel, and people don't seem to realize it. And that's not hyperbole. This is the God honest truth. And I think that the people that have woken up recognize that. I certainly know that John has. I certainly know that JJ has. So I'm certainly not the only one. And you're not alone out there if you're thinking like, hey, look, all my liberal friends think this, my teachers think this, my friends at college think this, I'm being taught this, but I don't agree with them. You're not alone. You're not. And so let me dive into what I thought about the speakers. I have them here. I did get a list of them before I came on. Hopefully it's right. So I'm going to kind of know in particular order. One of them was the ambassador to India. I don't really have much to say on that. Stephen Miller was one of them, who was the White House Deputy Chief of Staff of Policy. And I thought his what he said was exactly right. He's the sword, right? You got to have people that are the dove. You got to have people the sword. I don't know what else to brand them as. If you have a better way to describe it, let me know. I'm okay with that. But right now, I'm just going to say the dove, which would be Charlie Kirk, and then the sword, which would be more along the lines of myself, Milo Zalopoulos, however you pronounce his last name, Matt Walsh, who, again, I don't agree with him on a lot of things by any stretch of imagination. He's a lot more further right than I am, and he's a lot more Christian, right? I mean, he's a lot more religious. A lot of people think that I somehow went Christian. No, I'm still not. I'm not. So I don't know where they get that from. Never said anything of the sort. But, I think that, I'm a lot more as far as the sword than Charlie Kirk ever was. And so White House Deputy Staff Stephen Miller had basically saying, look, the time is over for these discussions. We've done all we can to try to lower the temperature, so to speak. What happened was such a major atrocity that there's just no coming back from. I mean, this is going to be remembered, pretty much on the equal level of the assassination of John F. Kennedy. That's how big Charlie Kirk was to people. This is huge, and people that didn't ever heard of him before, coming out and going, okay, let me look into him. As a matter of fact, I had somebody message me the other night on Facebook. It was a comment, but they said, look, I didn't even know who he was, but people were saying bad things about him. So I looked into it, and I found out that everything they were saying was bullshit. And I was like, I actually agreed with what he had to say. I thought, well, that's what you do. That's what a critical thinker does. But Stephen Miller said, quote, we will prevail over the forces of weakness and evil. They can't imagine what they have awakened. We stand for what is good and virtuous and noble. And to those trying to incite violence and foment hatred against us, what do you have? You have nothing. You are nothing. You are wickedness and jealousy. You are hatred and your envy. You can build nothing and you can produce nothing. You can create nothing. We are the ones who build. We are the ones who create. We are the ones who lift up humanity. And you thought you can kill Charlie Kirk? You have made him immortal. And I think he's exactly right. And again, He's looking at from a spiritual point of view as far as his Christian beliefs, right? He actually believes there's an ontological battle between good and evil, which at this point I'm definitely not discounting. Do I believe it? No, I don't. But it's not exactly a implausible theory considering what we're seeing, and so I can understand at the very least that there's an epistemic justification for Christian beliefs that there are real things out there, such as spiritual warfare, good and evil from God and Satan, demons and things of that nature. I can understand how people get to that conclusion. I don't find it as irrational as you would find, hardcore atheists that are been around the communities, their beliefs. The new atheist TM, they would obviously think that's all bunk, and I get it. I do. I think when you look at psychics, that's all bunk. When you look at tarot cards, that's all bunk, but that's okay. People that believe it, more power to you. That's their belief. I don't have to believe it. They don't have to believe that it's otherwise. That's what a normal person does, right? But you're free to share your beliefs. There's nothing wrong with that. You shouldn't be assassinated because you have a different belief than somebody. And unfortunately, the far left over on Blue Sky, especially, they take a different approach. They're like, nah, he deserved it. Or, oh, he was, even no offense to UK here, he said he knew what he was getting himself into. But what does that tell you about the political climate? If somebody has to be concerned that they might be politically assassinated because of their voice and their beliefs, that's a bad thing. Why should anybody have to take safety precautions like bulletproof glass and Kevlar vest to go have conversations with students on campus? So UK PI, the fact that he knew what he was getting into and he still did it means that he really did have core beliefs. But why would there be a political climate that exists that even he would need to? Nobody had to worry about going to campuses doing the ratification of children during COVID and all that stuff. Nobody went to camp to shoot people. Even in the days of the Vietnam War, sure we saw some protests, but most of them were violence. Most of them were without violence. The hippies were not a violent movement; they were a love fest, right? Matter of fact, the hippies, who everybody considers liberal, were probably more conservative than you think. They expressed it differently, but they wanted the same values as conservatives did, I think, especially with the freedom to be who you are and to live your life how you want and have freedom of speech and not have somebody want to kill you for it. So John says, I'm a center-right conservative and I'm fucking livid, not angry, but enraged. Kirk was reasonable. He was accepting and tolerant. He was killed anyway. My anger at this point is almost limitless. Yeah, I think you're in the same, again, we all go through those stages of grief. And even though I wasn't somebody who had any emotional ties to Charlie, I didn't know him. I didn't ever talk to him. I certainly seen his clips and watched his videos. And I would agree with him on some things. I would disagree with him on other things. But I always thought he did very well in these conversations. I thought he was a brilliant conversationalist, and he handled the conversations far better than any of us could. He was a master, brilliant master at conversation. I mean, yes, I'm envious. So why wouldn't anybody be? So I said, nobody would replace Kirk, but we're standing up in his place. Absolutely. And here's another thing. Look, he had his one voice. But now millions of voices are out there. Tens of thousands of people, if not hundreds of thousands of people, maybe even millions of people have been activated to raise their voices. And that will at least try to fill that hole of that one man. That's impressive. Let's say hundreds of thousands of new voices. I'm going to say millions even, because the Democratic Party lost 4.5 million registered voters not too long ago, and 2.5 million of them came to the Republican Party, which I also have issues with. Again, I would consider myself on the more conservative spectrum than I would be with Republicans, because I think they're feckless and I think they've done nothing. And I think that Pam Bondi needs to get off her ass and start doing something to start arresting these people that have been destroying our country. And we know that they're criminally liable. We know that the crimes were committed. That's no question about it. So where are all these arrests? I mean, our country cannot move on until it holds the people responsible for these things. And I know they're trying, but what the hell is going on? Why is it not moving fast enough, right? So anyways, that was my view on Stephen Miller's approach. That even though he came from a spiritual view, I do believe in evil realism. Evil is real, but in the metaphysical sense, not in the Christian sense. But I also think good is real. I think love is real. These are just philosophical positions. They don't have to be something that are just something you are mandated or obligated to believe. These are just how you want to look at the world, just like it would be with numbers. If you want to take a nominalist approach, that's fine. If you want to take a mathematical Platonist approach, that's fine too. I have moved from nominalism to Platonic realism when it comes to abstractions, because I do accept more the Quine thesis and the indispensability of them in science. I don't know how you could do science or use logic if you don't accept these things as actual real things, as real objects in some kind of abstract plane. And again, that doesn't mean that they physically exist, right? Again, these are all philosophical conceptual things. And so I moved more from a nominalist position, which I used to think, is a simple, easy position to take, to a more refined position of Platonic realism. And there's a lot of people have talked about that. There's a book called Necessary Beings, I think, by John Rasmussen, who's a PhD in philosophy. Josh Rasmussen, I'm sorry. And he's a really brilliant guy, very brilliant guy. And even though, again, his stuff is way beyond my ability to understand and apprehend, I do think he makes some points that necessary beings maybe do exist. And that wouldn't necessarily be God, but things like a quantum fluctuation, Higgs field, these things have to exist in the universe. Why? I have no idea. But I don't think that reality can exist without certain necessary beings, such as the Higgs field or quantum fluctuations. And again, that's just how I'm looking at the universe. That could be completely wrong, but it does make more sense to me that maybe necessary beings do exist like that, because I don't understand what absolute nothing would be in the universe. If that's the case, then the universe must exist, and the universe becomes a necessary being. Why? Don't know. Is that because of something necessary about the laws of the universe? Because again, I don't think putting God there explains it. I really don't. Well, you're just making another necessary being. Well, why does God have to be a necessary being? Well, because, beliefs, blah, blah, blah. Okay, but I don't think that really answers the question. I think that's just a possible explanation. You haven't proved anything by positing God any more than I proved anything by positing quantum fluctuations. So I do think there is right about his what he said. Tucker Carlson was there. I didn't really follow along too much with Tucker Carlson. I don't really understand Tucker very well. I've never been a fan of Tucker Carlson. I'm going to leave that one for somebody else. The president's son, Donald Trump Jr., I thought he did really well. I thought he made good points. Again, I don't want this video to be very long. I'm only going to go an hour. So I don't want to dive too much into each individual person. And I'm already half hour into this. But Tulsi Gabbard, Director of National Intelligence, I think she was right on as well. She understands what we're up against. And she understands that we have intelligence out there that has proven, I think, beyond all reasonable doubt, that in what year was it? It was 2016, that President Obama had sat in the Situation Room with other people such as Clapper, Comey, Rice, Lynch, Kerry, and a few other people. And they came up with a plan to try to cover up the scandal of Hillary's emails. And that scandal was basically to do whatever it took to make sure that Trump never won the presidency. And by doing so, they made fake intelligence reports. They suppressed real intelligence reports that the CIA and FBI had. And they said, no, we don't want these intelligence reports. We don't care what they say. He directed them to and ordered them to fabricate intelligence to make it sound there was more of a collusion between Donald Trump and Russia. We know this is true now. We know this. This is not hype. This is not speculation. And I'll be going over those evidences either on this channel or the Non Sequitur Show channel. But we know this to be true now. If you don't know this to be true, then you just haven't been paying attention. You could deny it. That's fine. But you're not aware of it. Then you have not been paying attention. But you can go right now and look at the press releases from the ODNI, which is the Office of the Department of National Defense, that Tulsi Gabbard is the head of, and read what she wrote. She wrote there's a treasonous conspiracy at the highest level, starting with Obama. And I believe her. Now, somebody can say, well, Tulsi Gabbard's, this, that, Trump, blah, blah, blah. I don't believe. Okay, that's fine. Look, you don't trust the government. I don't trust the government either when it came to Biden and Obama. So one of us is the conspiracy theorist. Okay, one of us is. Either the person who is saying that Trump is the big bad man, orange man bad, and that he's destroying the country and he's a dictator, he's a Hitler. Either I'm the conspiracy theorist, and somehow I've got all my information incorrect, even though, again, hard data out there to support it, plus reasonable inference, or the far left is right, and I have seen no evidence that they're right. They've never showed me a damn thing that they're right. All they showed me is already just stuff that's already been explained, disproven, and repeated by what they've heard on mainstream media. That's just not evidence to me. We have the evidence of this meeting. We know this meeting existed. We know who was in the meeting. We also have 20 whistleblowers that said and testified in front of Congress that this is what happened. 20 whistleblowers. Okay, so there have been grand juries to investigate this. This is what Pam Bondi and the rest of them are looking into. So you can't just say it didn't happen. So I would say there's three groups of people out there right now. The people that are ignorant of this stuff, the people that know about it but somehow justify it and think they're on the right side of history, who think that, I guess, assassination of political figures is somehow a moral good. I can't imagine myself being on the wrong side of history here. I just can't. If this is how history is, then maybe we really are in a fallen world. Maybe we are in a world that's just made to be evil. And that's not a world I really want to be a part of. I mean, I want to make it better, So there's those kinds of people. And there's a third group that are people like us that actually know the truth. And out of that, people that know the truth, or I would even say believe the truth. I mean, you don't have to claim it as knowledge. I'm claiming it as knowledge. I'm absolutely claiming it as knowledge. It's not just mere belief. It's knowledge. And knowledge is a subset of belief, contrary to what any idiot ever says. It really is. And so one of us has to be the conspiracy theorist here, right? John says, so just to clarify, you were advocating for William Lane Craig's position, i.e. necessary being. No, not necessarily. What I'm advocating for is that the possibility of necessary being cannot be just randomly excluded, right? You cannot just preclude it from your ontology or your epistemology. There has to be a reasonable argument to be had to say, look, necessary beings are impossible to do that. And there's no way I think anybody could do that. But I do tend that there probably is more likely, I guess I should say. I'm not convinced yet, but I think it's more likely the case that I'm leaning to some kind of necessary being. Yeah. That doesn't mean God. And you could even say maybe he's the God of the philosophers, Spinoza's God, right? Right? That's actually what it would probably be for most philosophers. Most philosophers would look at this kind of stuff and say, look, it's not religion. It's not spirituality. What you're seeing is the glory of the universe itself in reality. And that's what you're feeling. And these necessary beings that must exist because it's just a fundamental fact of reality, maybe a brute fact, right? But brute facts don't have explanations. So, and John says, of course, I just want to make sure you weren't claiming a true or just possibility, just Spinoza. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. You know what I'm talking about. And most, again, you're tend to philosophy. Most people that understand philosophy agree with me on a lot of these things because they understand that things like Charlie Kirk talked about was above the pay grade of most people. Many people did not understand his arguments, but if you know philosophy, you're like, wow, yeah, that actually, he made sense. He was well-read. He was very well-read. And so I think what happens is because they want people to have conflict. They want people to have discord and strife. And so they confuse people. And the way they do that is by labeling him something that he wasn't, and labeling people that agree with him something that they aren't, right? And we see this with Charlie Kirk quotes. Matter of fact, I'm putting in the video description. I'm gonna look it up right now. Matter of fact, there's a guy named Jesús. Okay, I'm not gonna butcher his name. I'm practicing my Spanish. So one sec, because I got to find this video. And I don't want to butcher his name, but Jesús Enrique Rosas. Okay, he says a lot better than I do. He'll never watch this. I guarantee it. He's a big YouTuber, and that's fine. I do send him some DMs on things that I think I would like him to review, and he's been very cordial with his time. And he's even doing a video, one of the videos that I think, look, man, maybe this needs to be talked about. So I told him I was going to be promoting his channel. This is not for reciprocity. He doesn't really promote channels. He doesn't need to. But I'm going to put his video description or video in my link. But his video is on the way people have taken Charlie Kirk's quotes out of context. and he's done a masterful job on explaining it. I do think he could have gone more into the philosophy aspect of it, because when it came to certain things like how Charlie Kirk looked at empathy, I would have loved to heard more about the metaphysics involved, the fact that, look, we cannot epistemically reach inside somebody's head and hear their thoughts and experience their qualia or their sense data. They're epistemically isolated from us. So the way Charlie Kirk looked at empathy was, look, it's kind of like telekinesis, as John had pointed out the other day. I can't read your mind. I can't read your feelings. I can't experience your feelings any more than I can experience your mind. So to say that I have empathy for you is kind of a misleading term. What it is just another word for sympathy at that point. I can sympathize with you based on my own experience and have compassion for you. And that's what he was trying to explain to people. And this is not extreme views. This is how metaphysics kind of looks at this stuff. There's been a lot of philosophical positions on this stuff. And that's, again, goes back to the whole understanding of his quote on the Civil Rights Act. He wasn't against the Civil Rights Act. He was against on certain things that they used it for and some of the things in it that he questioned. And he had every right to. And he wasn't the only one questioning it. Many people have. Barry Goldwater had questioned it. Thomas Sowell had questioned it. Matter of fact, he wrote a brilliant book. I can't recommend it enough, called Discrimination and Disparities, on disparity theory, or it's called disparity impact theory. It was the unintended consequences of liberalism, the unintended consequences of affirmative action, the unintended consequences of DEI. One of which was, instead of going on a plane like it used to be and saying, hey, look, I have a qualified person flying this plane because they got there because they had been tested and their skill level got them to where they're going. He looks and said, okay, was this person now hired because of their skill or their skin color or their biological sex? Is this woman really qualified anymore? Or is this black guy really qualified anymore? Or this black woman, even, because they ticked 2 boxes, qualified anymore? Because they were hiring for quota, not for merit. And we all know that's true. That's not racist. That is a fact. What was racist is them hiring people because of those tick boxes. Right? Because if you read John Rawls about the theory of justice, which I didn't actually read, but I've read excerpts from it. I did actually even know his daughter on Facebook one time. I've had conversations with her. But he was talking about this veil of ignorance, that justice should be blind, that we shouldn't give a crap whether the person who committed the crime is of one ethnicity or another. Of course, that's only an idealized case, right? We have to take into account certain things such as economic, social understandings. There has to be some things as temperance and mercy. So I don't think there's a blanket rule where you can just look at things automatically and say, look, this crime was committed. We can't take any mitigating factors. That wouldn't obviously work. I think we have to take in mitigating factors. We have to take in exculpatory evidence. We have to. And so I don't have a problem with that. But what we're seeing is that going extreme and saying, oh, look, this poor black kid raised up in the ghetto. Yes, he's committed multiple felonies. Oh, yes, he's attacked people. Yes, he's put people in hospital and stabbed people, but we're going to give him more chances. And then he goes out, commits armed robbery, kills somebody, and we look at the judge and says, what the hell's wrong with you, right? Oh, you're racist. No, that's not have anything to do with racist. It has to do with the judge was letting a sociopath go free. It wouldn't matter whether that person was white or black. Nobody gives a shit. And so that's what he was trying to explain to people, that these policies had unintended consequences. And he was killed for it. He was executed for it. So I think Tulsi Gabbard, going back to the speakers real quick, she was right. And she's going to make changes. And we are designating these groups like Antifa as domestic terrorists, which was exactly what they are. I'm not ignoring the live chat, but I can't see if you guys are. Let me check here. Is there anything? No, you guys have been awfully quiet out there. You guys are quiet out there. The last thing I have is from John. Yeah, so that's okay. Again, I'm only really doing. Honestly, there's only really like a handful of people that I hope ever listen to these videos. One of them, actually, I will tell you, is my neighbor. I want her to listen to stuff. She enjoys this content. We think a lot alike, and she's had a profound impact on me in ways she probably doesn't even know, nor she need to know. It's not her reason. It's not her life to know how about those things, right? But I have a lot of respect for her. I really, 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 really do. And between her and some other people, and even a family member, that I want to hear these things. Other than that, you guys are all along for the ride. And I know, and I don't mean that to be disrespectful. I don't. I appreciate each and every one of you. You know, everybody who listens, everybody who watches. I respect people around my channel. But the reason why I'm doing this is for the people in my life. Period. It's the only reason I came back, because I want them to live in a better world. And I want other people that want to come along for the ride to change the world to do so as well. Because the only thing we leave behind is what we did to influence people to make our society a better place. And I think we have a moral obligation to do that, because we are a societal species. And if you start thinking yourself as an individual rather than a collective, you're not going to function well in society. You're going to have things like main character syndrome. You're going to have traits that may look like narcissism, but they're not. Narcissism is a very specific thing. It might even look like psychopathy. It might even look like sociopathy or psychopath. And again, I'm not an expert in this stuff. I'm not trying to be. But for when I understand about these things, which I do, I think I understand okay, you know, you can misread people. Like I hear people all the time saying that the guy that shot Charlie Kirk, and again, I don't want to even bring up his name, but he was a psychopath. And I don't think we can conclude that yet. But you'd be like, but Steve, look what he did. Yeah, I get that. What he did was psychotic. I don't think anybody's going to disagree that what he did was mentally bizarre. Doesn't necessarily fall into somebody who's a psychopath. I think that he knows what he did was probably wrong, but doesn't care. That would be more of a sociopath if that's the case. But even then, his motives seem to be that he just didn't want Charlie Kirk saying what he was saying, and instead of debating him to change his mind because he couldn't, he had to take an extreme measure. That's my belief. That doesn't definitely make somebody a psychopath. I know we all want to run out there and go, oh, you know, he's a psychopath because he does this and this, and I do it too. I admit that. You know, it's a Pavlovian knee-jerk reaction, and I got to stop doing it, because just because you do something like that doesn't inherently make you a psychopath. Mike says, I'm working as a mechanic, so I can't touch my phone too much without getting greasy. Okay, but you're listening. You listen to that work. Thank you. And again, I'm for you guys too. Look, I shouldn't say it just for the people in my immediate life as well, but it's also people that are out there that in my online life that I'm doing this for as well. You guys, like Mikey out there, he's listening at work. I'm doing it for you as well. And again, if people want to be a part of that, if they want to become a member of the channel, if they want to donate, I'm going to obviously accept that, because, you know, times are tough for everybody. But I tell you what, I like where I'm at right now. I just do. A lot of things are changing in my life right now. And I think it's all for the better. Obviously, you know, I'm not going to get into too much detail, but I got to tell you that right now, it's okay. Things are okay. There are some stressors, but I just think that everything's for a reason, whether it be for, you know, a spiritual reason or not. Because I have people asking me, hey, look, you know, you're leaning more towards spiritual stuff. No, not necessarily, but I do obviously think that we do need to recognize that we don't understand a lot of things about the universe. That's for damn sure. So I am doing it for you guys out there as well, Mikey, and of course the people that I know that are going to listen to this, which I hope are going to be my neighbor and family. So, anyways, Dad Knows Best says, we love the grease, Mikey. Keep up the work. Yeah. Hey, look, I was a mechanic in the Navy, right? For all practical purposes, I was a glorified nuclear mechanic. I was basically a mechanic that understand radiological considerations, because, you know, we were working with things that had radiological controls. And so it took a lot more skill set to understand not just how to repack a valve, because, you know, you have to repack a valve and you have to cut up, you know, the packing material, and you have to take disassemble it, and whether it's a butterfly or a ball cock valve. Yeah, there's called a ball cock valve. Most of them were very, very simple device where you just had basically something that was between the inlet and the outlet. And so they weren't that hard to disassemble. But you had to understand that, look, there was some radiological water going through there, or potential radiological water, then yeah, you had to understand the physics behind the reactor. And obviously, since we're running these what's called ship service turbo generators, that directly controlled reactor power. A lot of people misconception. Reactor power is not controlled at point of bounding heat by control rods. People think, oh, you want to make the reactor more powerful, more energy, you raise reactor height. Well, that only raises the temperature of the average coolant, what that does. So what you want to do is you want to increase steam demand. Well, actually, yeah, actually, it's true. It raises the T average. But if you want to do, you want to get more reactor power, you actually make the water colder, because then the water molecules get more dense and the neutron has less travel time to be thermalized in order for the uranium-235 to absorb it, right? These are all the nuclear physics stuff, right? Called the lethargy, or the average logarithmic energy decrement per collision coefficient, and the macroscopic energy, or so the macroscopic cross section for absorption, just to throw some fancy terminologies out there, not to get into physics, but that's what it is, right? And so I basically was a grease monkey too, but nuclear trained. How we got that and that from politics, I don't know. But let's kind of wrap this up. And I only got 2 more people to talk about. Obviously, Susan Wiles, she was fine. J.D. Vance thought he did a really good job too. But the big 2 speakers were Erica Kirk and Donald Trump. And I'm not ever going to imagine what Erica Kirk is going through. The pain, the grief. I mean, this was somebody who was not just, a husband. This was like the entire love of her life. This was her in her mind, her spiritual partner as well, right? And I think what she said was touching and beautiful. I don't know myself what I would have the wherewithal to forgive somebody who did that. I don't think that I could, but I'm not Christian, so I have no obligation or duty to do so. I won't ever forgive or forget the people that have screwed me over, and if there is a 9th level of hell, they can rot in it for all I care. I don't give a shit. But the differences between me and them is I would never go out and willfully try to hurt anybody. I have never willfully gone out and ever tried to hurt anybody. And I certainly would never willfully go out and try to have them executed or assassinated. That is not a normal person. That's not what a normal person does. So I don't forgive those people that have harmed me. Nope, not at all, never will. They can rot in the deepest, darkest, dank pits of hell. If I became Christian, I might have to reevaluate that, right? Because Jesus commands that you forgive those people that trespass against you. Maybe that's one of the reasons I'm not Christian. I don't know. Well, other reasons I don't believe the narrative, right? But be that as may, I thought she did an amazing job, and I do think that she lost the father of her children, right? And her stepping up as a CEO, I think, is wonderful. But you guys got to remember, and I will say this till I'm blue in the face, and I know it. John knows it. Mikey knows it. JJ knows it. But I'm telling you, Charlie Kirk was the moderate on the right. He was not the radical by any stretch of the imagination. There are far, 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 far more people radical on the right, such as Milo, Matt Walsh, right? The moderates were people like Charlie Kirk, like Riley Gaines, like oh gosh, what the heck's her name? She was on Fox, but they let her go too. And then she started her own podcast and just made her name on Megyn Kelly, right? I'm terrible at names, guys. I really, really am. So I just can't remember names very well. It's a problem that I have to accept, that I just don't remember names very well. Even after I met somebody, I forget their name. But Megyn Kelly, she did an amazing job. So I really have the utmost respect for Erica for being able to do that. And then the last person, of course, Donald Trump. And I thought he did really well. I thought that he combined all the elements of what the memorial is supposed to be, which was in remembrance of Charlie Kirk, politics, and his beliefs, right? His Christian beliefs, which I think are sincere. I do think he believes them now. I didn't at one time, but I think that he actually does have sincere beliefs, be they out of the fear of the unknown or whatever. But I do think that he believes what he believes when it comes to Christianity. I don't think it's feigned. You can believe it's feigned, and that's okay. It's not a big deal. But the point being is that anybody who thinks that he is a narcissist, sorry, John, because he still thinks it, or a fascist, especially the narcissist, I can give you a little leeway on, even though, again, I don't think he's a narcissist. I just don't. But for anybody, especially who thinks he's a fascist, a Nazi, a dictator or compare to Hitler, you have lost your ever-loving fucking mind. I'm just going to tell you straight up, you've lost your fucking mind. Because again, those positions are much further than conservative, much further than a Democrat, much further than a socialist. Then you have fascist and Nazi. So if you look at the spectrum, you're going to again have our anarchy, liberalism. Now people say, well, what about liberal Democrats? There's a different way to look at these ways of arranging these things. So you can still be a liberal Democrat. You can be a Democrat, still have liberal beliefs, right? But the original type liberals were more of the hippie movement, right? The live and love kind of stuff, right? But they wanted just freedom. They didn't want any government intervention, which would be more toward anarchy rather than somebody like a dictator. So the original hippie movement would be much more toward the liberal, but even then with the Overton window shift, they've become more on the right. A lot of people that start off as hippies are now leaning right. So it would go anarchy, liberalism, centrist, which I kind of was, or moderate. Then it would go Republican. Then it would go, and I'm not including independents. Then it would go moderate, Republican, and then it would go conservative. Then it would go Democrat. Then it would go socialist. Then it would go fascist, and then it would go Nazi. So I think a lot of people are confused on that because the conservatism is more the moderate view anymore because of the Overton window. We're in the middle between the anarchist and the Nazi. The conservative would be. We're actually probably dead set in the middle as far as the political spectrum. And I go, if King Crocodile ever watches this, he'd be like, Steve, you're an idiot. Let's discuss this because you don't know what you're talking about. But I don't think he would. Actually, I talked to King Crocodile on the phone the other day. I'm honored to be somebody that he actually talks to on the phone, right? Not just on Hangouts. I consider him to be an actual friend. And I think that he would probably agree with that in a lot of ways. And again, he's one of the smartest people I've ever met in my entire life, by far. But that's what I think that Donald Trump is at. He's a conservative. He's nowhere near the Democrat, socialist, fascist Hitler. He's a conservative, and he used to be a Democrat, right? And so he has moved actually more to the left. if you look at it from that way, you really think that a lot of people think, oh, Donald Trump moved to the right, but maybe I would argue he moved to the left because he moved from being a Democrat to a Republican and a conservative. So he is still a Republican by political party, but he moved from Democrat to conservative because a conservative is actually more left than a Democrat on that way of looking at the spectrum as far as government control. And I really do want you guys to think about that. As far as government control, Democrats want more control. Think about it. They wanted to tell you who and what you can talk to on the internet. They wanted to police your speech. They wanted Donald Trump off X or Twitter. I can't believe I'm actually calling it X now. I can't believe I'm doing that. Damn. I was like, I'm never going to stop calling it Twitter. Now I'm calling it X. Whatever. But they wanted his removal. They celebrated his removal off Twitter, right? They wanted to cancel anybody off YouTube that didn't say what they thought was appropriate. Do you dare you speak out against, TQ plus? You'd be canceled. How dare you have criticisms of how they're imposing vaccines? You'd be canceled. How dare you even question the cause? You'd be canceled. So Democrats were far more controlling when it came to that than conservatives. But I do think that if anybody thinks he's a fascist or Nazi, well, John says, guess who comes over the hill next? Charlie was nice. I'm not. Yeah, and neither am I, nor do I claim to be. And that's why I'm coming back, and that's why I'm coming back with a vengeance. It's not going to be huge. I don't expect it to be huge. I don't want it to be. Well, I'm not going to say that. Look, nobody's going to mind being huge, but the problem is coming with that comes things that violate your personal life, right? Because people know what happened in my personal life many times over, and I it's not that I'm scared of that. It's just that I don't need it, and other people in my life don't need it. And I thank God that the people in my family don't have social media. Right? They just don't. They don't like it. And so anybody trying to, affect my family, they're just not going to give a shit. They're from the Midwest, man. They agree with me. Right? They agree with me. They're not liberals. by any stretch of the imagination. So I don't even have to worry about that, right? There's just one person in particular in my family that has been, I think, you know, and I don't want to use it. Well, you know, I'm sorry, but it was indoctrination, and I'm not going to try to sugarcoat it. Because if they ever do go back and listen to this video, they don't listen to me. But if they do go back and listen to the video, it was indoctrination. It was brainwashing, which they again think that I've been brainwashed, which is, you know, again, going back full circle to where I started. One of us is wrong, right? One of us is a conspiracy theorist, whether we know it or not. And I can just tell you that I have spent a very long time looking over the evidence. I've spent a long time looking at people and talking to people that I trust, that do know what the hell they're talking about. And I am absolutely and adamantly convinced that I'm on the right side of history here. And I'm happy to have a discussion with people who want to have that discussion, but are not going to come at me sideways. And again, that somebody will say, "Well, you don't want your mind changed." Well, yeah, in a way, I kind of don't, because if you know, of course, who does, right? If my mind has changed where I realize that the Earth is flat, my whole reality is shot to hell, right? If I wake up one day and somebody convinces me that the Earth is flat, it's going to be a complete shock to my epistemic system, so to speak. That's a huge departure from my beliefs. So of course I don't want somebody to convince me that the Earth is flat, because, you know, I know the Earth is not flat. But if I actually saw the Earth is flat, I would have to at least give pause to consider it. But of course, I probably would think I was delusional, right? I think it's a delusion. We're living in the Matrix or something. I don't. At that point, right? Because going back to the anchor points, when your brain is overloaded and has a contradiction or something that shocks your epistemology, because of especially looking at something in the real world, which would be an ontological phenomenon, and we say, "Wow, the Earth is flat." At that point, you're going to latch on to anything that people tell you. They say, "Hey, Steve, I told you we're living in the Matrix." I was like, "Shit, yeah, well, maybe you do have a point. Let me look into that." Right? Because my brain's trying to anchor that first explanation, regardless if that explanation is true or not. That's what it's going to latch onto. And that's what I think has happened to the far left. They started latching onto things that were ontologically inconsistent, such as the whole a woman can be a man thing, the whole transgender thing, that trans women are women. That's an ontological contradiction. And once you start with that, it's no different than 2 plus 2 equals 5. It was Orwellian. It was a way to have people be open to suggestion of things that they normally not would be open to. It was the 1984 equivalent of 2 plus 2 equals 5. And when people say, "Why do you care about 1% of the population?" It wasn't had anything to do with the 1% of the population. It had to do with the mimetic mind virus that was being put into people's minds, that were making them believe things that were just grossly incorrect as far as reality. You know, just like there are 2 sexes, male and female, in the human species. That's just an ontological fact. 2 plus 2 equals 4. That's just a mathematical fact. Even ontologically, you cannot have a square circle, right? They don't exist. They're not just a mathematical impossibility, but they're a physical impossibility. But once you start believing that square circles exist, you can pretty much believe anything. There's a name for that too. It's called the principle. Oh, hang on. Sorry about that. But it basically means if you start with a contradiction, you can believe everything. And so the whole, I don't know when my volume went down, so hopefully what I said went through. But basically, I was saying that if you start with a 2 plus 2 equals 5 contradiction, your brain is going to latch on to any anchor point that makes sense. And so when people start believing things like trans women or women, that anchor point is going to be explaining that apparent contradiction to them, because it is a contradiction. And so I think that was one of the mimetic viruses that the people in power used to suggest to people, give them suggestions. Because I do believe that we are in some kind of psyop, it's called. And again, not trying to be conspiratorial. It's not Alex Jones level shit. There's a brilliant guy out there. If you guys have never heard of him, his name is Chris Hughes, right? Chase Hughes, I'm sorry. Chase Hughes, go look him up. He is an applied behavior researcher. And he had a video not too long ago explaining how we are living in a psyop. He's not a conspiracy guy. He's a normal dude that does applied behavioral research. And he's absolutely concluded that this is what's going on in society. And it makes sense. I'm not using it as the anchor point to rationalize my beliefs, but I have to take it into consideration, obviously. But it fits the data. It's not just, hey, look, I'm going to look into this more. It's this is exactly what's going on because it's consistent with the information that we all know. Yeah, my mic went down for 5 seconds. Hey, Hoggets, how are you? Nice for you to drop by and say hi. Hope you and yours are doing well. I definitely know who you are, so I appreciate it. But anyways, I just wanted to kind of leave it with that then, I guess. That, look, if you watch Charlie Kirk's memorial and you say things like, oh, look at the sparkles, look at the fireworks. This was a KKK rally. This was a white supremacist rally, even though DJ Daniels was there, that kid with brain cancer. And there was a touching moment where, he had tied the shoes of a guy in a wheelchair. And I'm like, this is hate. This is racism. What the hell are you guys talking about? But that's how they're trying to change the narrative. That's how they're trying to affect people. But I'm telling you, it's not working any longer. I have not seen a single solitary person say, look, hey, Steve, I was with you. I was MAGA and all this other stuff. And then all of a sudden change and say, look, now, you know what? Yeah, Trump's Hitler. Nobody. Not one. But I have had people say, look, I used to believe this, but now I found out you're right, Steve, and now I agree with you. More than anything. Why is that? So anyways, I'm just going to wrap it up there. I want to know your guys' thoughts in the comment section. I will be moderating my comment section, decently. If you want to have a conversation, fine. But if you're just going to throw out hate and you're just going to crap on a man that was executed with leaving behind a wife and 2 kids, yeah, you're not going to get a platform with me. You're not going to be able to spew your narrative. You have other channels for that. If you want to call that an echo chamber, I don't care. You want to call me Hitler? I don't care. But do it on your own channel. You don't need to come over here and do it on mine. Right? You have the freedom to do it. And you have the freedom to do it, moderate me on your channels. So that's our freedoms to do that. So you're not going to get away with expository of this narrative that, Charlie Kirk was a bad man. If you want to believe that, that's fine. But if you want to say, hey, Steve, I heard this. Can you tell me more about it? Great. Or, hey, look, I don't agree with Charlie. This, and this, but, I don't think he should have been assassinated. I can understand that. But everybody who says that, oh, Steve, you're not the same person, you're falling off the edge, well, I got to tell you, go to my Facebook. Those people on my Facebook I've known for 20, 30, 50 years. They will tell you right now, I have not changed. They'll tell you right now, this is real me. This is what I've always believed kind of stuff. So I haven't changed. I've just gotten more informed and more active. But if you think that I have changed to the point where you can't accept even accept that my beliefs are contrary to yours, then what I don't need you around. Right? I mean, I'm not, what am I supposed to do at that point? Because I've never blocked anybody for their beliefs. I blocked them for their actions and their hostile nature and their vitriol. I don't need that. But if you disagree with me, I'm not going to block you. No, disagree. I hope one day your mind changes. But it's all how you approach it, right? But I've never blocked anybody for merely having to disagree with me. If I did, I apologize, but I don't certainly think I don't ever have. So what do you guys think about that? I mean, did you guys watch? I got 5 more minutes and I'll wrap up. Did you guys watch? I know John did, but did anybody else watch the memorial service? Do you think it's reasonable for somebody to say, oh, look, these were fireworks and therefore it was an MMA event, right? A World Federation event. It was for show. No, it was for a tribute, because that's what Charlie Kirk would have wanted. That's what Turning Point is about. That's what he was the CEO of. It was a revival. I don't have to accept their Christian beliefs to understand that, but I'm certainly not going to shit on them for it, because I'm going to tell you right now, and I'll be very clear on this, because I've seen people do it on Twitter. If you think Erica Kirk was faking or didn't have those heartfelt emotions at the death of her soulmate You are a piece of crap person. You are a shitty person. And you need to really look inside yourself and realize something inside of you is broken. And I don't care if I've known you in my entire life. I don't care if you're my family. I don't care how close you are to me. And I'll say it with love. And I do say it with love. But I have to tell people the truth. Something has broken inside of you if you say that about a widow like that. And I can't understand it. I will try to help you. I'll try to understand why you would say such a thing, but it's on your part, not mine. I can't imagine anybody go, hey, look, Charlie's death was a moral good, and I'm going to celebrate it. No, I can't imagine that. I can't imagine saying that a widow who now has 2 children to raise on her own is not sincerely grieving. I can't. I refuse to. I'll take that as something that's against my core beliefs. And so I have a moral obligation to refuse that. Mikey says, I didn't watch the whole thing. I only saw highlights. There was zero hate or evil. People saying that have serious issues. Absolutely. There was nothing hateful about that. Nothing. There was nothing relating to, somebody that I called out just, I think it was this morning, they called it, what we're seeing here is the rise of the Fourth Reich. And I'm like, are you out of your mind? That's the psyop. Because there's people that want you to believe that. That's the psyop. This is not organic. This is literally people that are going out of their way to make you believe something that is just far, far and away from reality. And you have to ask yourself why. Because again, I don't see anybody believing them except for people that already believe them. Nobody's going, well, God damn, I think you're right. I was with you all this way, but man, having fireworks and celebrating and having music and laughing and telling jokes at a memorial, man, that's just evil. That's Hitler right there. Yeah, I don't think that's what a Hitler would have done. I just don't. So anyways, I'm gonna leave you guys with that. That's my rant. I just wanted to give you guys my impression, because if people had asked me, I thought the memorial service was brilliantly well done. I thought it was well executed. Put aside again, if you don't believe in God, you're not a Christian, like someone like myself, you still can objectively look at it and say, hey, is this something that would have paid tribute to Charlie Kirk? Because that's who it's about. It's not about you. It's not about me. It's not about Trump. It's about Kirk. And I think that it did. And I know somebody's saying, well, Trump made it about him. No, he really didn't. He was actually, I think, more compassionate than I've seen him. I mean, this was like a son to him. He wanted Charlie to know that he wants his children, Charlie's children, who's going to be raised now without a father, that they are going to have a better America to live in. That's what he wanted the public to know, what he's doing to make it a better place, because that's what people have voted him to do. And I regret that I didn't cast my vote. I didn't vote, but I will be voting in the future. I am going to be voting to get the Democrats out on the local levels. I'm going to vote for them. Anything I can vote for to get them out of office, that's what I'm going to do. So with that, guys, I got a lot more coming up, and I'm going to end it. So thank you guys very much for watching. And got questions, let me know. And keep in touch. Thank you.